He's going to hang on, or he'll stop the fight. Down he goes. Oh, he's hurt. It's all over.
I told you today, I'm still the greatest of all time. Never again defeat me. Never again say that I'm going to be defeated.
I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, I'd like to take this chance to apologize to absolutely nobody.
They're throwing the towel in. The fight's all over. The fight's all over.
This is referee Mark Goddard, and it's your time to enter the FightMad zone. Get ready for 5 rounds of uninterrupted FightMad talk. I want you to keep it clean, protect yourself at all times, and remember, no blows below the belt. If you want to touch gloves, do it now. Go back to your corners. Let's do this.
So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the FightMad Podcast, hosted by myself, Joe Long, as we enter our 25th year in the fight game with Fighters Inc. Thank you very much for tuning in last week with our special guest, Michael Bisping, who brought much laughter to the podcast, many stories, as I'm sure our next guest will do. Indeed, I have no question of a doubt. We have amazing athletes, industry insiders, and celebrity fight fans coming onto the FightMad zone and the FightMad podcast. And I have no doubt that our next guest has a number of these people in his phone book, a number of these people at the end of a line, and we'll talk a bit about them as we go into the zone. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to the one and only Strikeforce, Bellator. We're going to talk a bit about kickboxing. We're going to talk a bit about Bruce Lee. We're going to talk a bit about Taekwondo. The one and only Mr. Scott Coker, CEO of Bellator. Scott, welcome to the FightMad Podcast.
Thank you so much, Joe. Pleasure to be here.
It's lovely to have you on, Scott. And we was talking a little bit before we jumped on air about how life's been for you. But just before we go into round one on the zone, what you've been up to recently, Scott?
Well, I can tell you, it's an exciting time for Bellator. We were very busy. We have been doing fights, as most people know, in the Mohegan Sun in a closed environment where we can't have any fans. And now I think we have maybe 2,000 fans per show. So this weekend or this Friday night show will also have 2,000 people. But California has opened up. So now we have the ability to throw fights in California where the full arena is available to us. So we booked July 31st at the Los Angeles Forum for the finals of our featherweight tournament. And that will be between Pitbull and AJ McKee. And besides the regular purse money, these guys are fighting for $1 million bonus check. So there's a lot riding on the line. And that'll be the first time we've done a fight with a full audience. And after what, about 18 months or almost feels like 2 years of being on lockdown, it's just a great feeling, Joe. It's really a good time for if you live in California or if you live in the United States, things have just really opened up. Almost feels just like pre-COVID, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, we was touching base a little earlier, Scott, on the excitement of being back and being around the mix and having people and energy around us. And you're a real big people person, very well respected within the combat sports industry, and been around for, hate to say it. Many years
Long
now.
time.
Many years
Long
now,
time.
Scott. We was talking off air, people, on our first fight show, which was in 1997 for Fighters Inc., which was a karate event, karate dinner show. When was actually your first show, Scott? Can you remember?
The first show that I did as a fight promoter had a partner, and it was a very small show. It was here in San Jose, and then at that time there was no San Jose arena, which where the Sharks play or where we do our fights now. There wasn't any, there wasn't any venue. The largest venue in the city of San Jose at that time was 3,200 people allowed. And that was the largest venue. So it was still very much a small little town. And we did it at the San Jose Civic Auditorium. And it was for a company. We produced a show and we own the show, but the television part of it or the sanctioning body was a company called PKA, which was owned by Joe Corley and John and Judy Quine.
Professional Karate Association?
Yes. And so they came in and they sanctioned this show. It was a fighter by the name of George Angod fought Felipe Garcia. And then we put a bunch of local talent on. And I think we had like 3,000 people there. And we all made money. And that was the start. And that was March of 1985. That was my very first show.
Wow.
Yeah, it's I wish I could say I was 6 or 7 years old, but I was in my early 20s, and I had a student come to me after martial arts class, and he said, "Hey, what do you think about doing a kickboxing show?" And I was like, "Well, how do you do that? I don't know how you do that." And he's like, "Well, Coors Beer wants to sponsor a kickboxing show, go after the Hispanic audience in San Jose." So, they had, I think it was like $15,000 at the time that they were going to put to this show. And again, we had no TV at that time. So I said, okay, let's try it. And then really it was kind of like, well, what do we do? And really it was a trial by error for the first show. And by the second show, we had a deal with, again, PKA. They brought in ESPN television in 1985 and late 85. And it was a fighter by the name of Brad Hefton. Bad Brad Hefton, that was his name. Bad Brad Hefton fought Don Nielsen, not Don Wilson, but Don Nielsen out of LA.
Right. Okay.
And it was one of the best fights. I can still remember that fight like it was yesterday. It was one of the best fights I've ever seen. But that was my first launch into television in late 85. And then, the rest, it's like years and years and years of promoting and getting our own television deal, working for K1, starting an MMA company called Strikeforce.
Of course.
And then, selling to the UFC, and then going to work for Bellator. It was, it's been quite a ride for the last, 35, 36 years.
Brilliant. And I salute you for that amount of time, Scott. It's quite nice to hear that backstory, because, you was, making me feel young today.
You are young, John. You're younger than me.
I was, but for us to be in it for 25 years and to hear, obviously I know that you come from martial arts, which we'll touch on a little bit later on in the show, very similar to myself and Paul Alderson, my business partner. We come from martial arts and then got into promoting. So it's there's a lot of synergy there between, Scott Coker and what we've done in the UK.
Seconds out, round one.
So obviously you've done martial arts as a young person, and you've seen many bouts, many fights in your time. What is Scott Coker's first ever fight memory?
First fight memory was a show that I went to here in the Bay Area, and it was promoted by our schools, actually. So the Association of Schools with Ernie Reyes promoted a tournament. It was a karate tournament, and they had one full contact karate fight. That's what they called it back then. Full contact karate. And you had to have long pants. You had to get 8 kicks in per round. And there literally was a judge called the kick judge, and he would flip these cards as you made your 8 kicks. After you made your 8 kicks, then you could just go box and do whatever. You didn't have to, kick anymore, but you had to do 8 kicks. Otherwise you're penalized. And so it was all above the waist. There's no leg kicks. Everybody had a mullet back then in the early 80s, right? So everybody had a mullet. And it was Sam Montgomery versus Ishmael Robles. And it was this fight, and Sam was a local guy. Ishmael was a very prominent kickboxer on the PK scene. And Ishmael knocked out the local guy. And unfortunately, it didn't work out for Sam. But that was my very first memory. And I was thrilled by it, because to me it was, wow, look at all these people, look at all these, and they're passionate fans, and they're really into it. And I feel like that was probably my first entry into like, oh, this is something maybe that I would really love to be a part of. And so that was the catalyst and the transition point to where I said, if I ever get the opportunity, I'm going to look into this one day. And then another, I think it was like 3 years later, the opportunity came my way.
Amazing. And you touched on Ernie Reyes there, Scott. Was that was your actual instructor, right? When you done martial arts?
Yeah. So in 1974, I was, probably 11 years old. I walked into my instructor school, who's still my instructor today, and his name is Ernie Reyes Sr., not Junior, the Ninja Turtle. And some people get it confused, but his father was a martial arts instructor here in town. It was a Taekwondo style at that time. He was under the instruction of a Korean master named Dan Choi. Dan K. Choi, who came from Korea. And that's another whole history part that we could go into. But, when I walked into San Jose, there's probably, 20 martial arts schools around. It was the early mid 70s, let's say. And I walked in there and, I signed up, started taking lessons, and he was my instructor, like for the first, I would say, I don't know, I'd say the first year he would teach all the kids classes and he would do all the instruction. And really it was such a great foundation for not just, learning basic self-defense or learning kicking and punching or striking or staying in shape, but really to me, I love martial arts just like you do, because it's the life skills that go behind it that really I feel is, something that we have to continue to educate, not just traditional martial artists, but even the MMA fight fans and the MMA fighters that you guys came from another system, right? These are all systems that were in place, but they all had a life skills, subject matter that was taught into this curriculum. And so to me, that's why I love martial arts. And I get a chance to see Master Reyes, probably once a month still today. And we just have a great time. And it's been a great journey. And I love what he's doing. He's continued doing. This guy has not stopped working out, Joe. He still trains every day. He eats healthy every day. This guy is on it every day. Still runs the schools every day. I mean, it's amazing. And when we started, we probably had 75 students. We had a demonstration team called the West Coast Demonstration Team. George Chung, Cynthia Rothrock was on the team. Ernie Reyes Jr., myself. And we did demonstrations in I would say the Battle of Atlanta, the U.S. Open, Diamond Nationals, Long Beach Internationals. It was like, the circuit here in the U.S. We would go and compete and do all these demonstrations. And that was really my childhood growing up. And so many magic memories, man, going to all these great tournaments and seeing all these great fighters at that time. And they were our heroes at that point. And Benny Urquidez came from, point fighting. Chuck Norris came from, Bill Wallace came from this group. So to me, it was just a great way to sit there. And I remember sitting there watching Benny Urquidez, fighting. And I was just like, wow, this guy is amazing. This guy is something's really special. And then it became this great kickboxer, and Chuck Norris became this great, TV star. But, it all came from the martial arts community that you and I grew up in. And that's really what that's really where I came from.
I think that the key word there, Scott, is community, because that's what these clubs do, and that's what they build, and they build trust and respect within the community, not only in that club but in the surrounding community, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you make a difference in your community, and that's why like if you and I had just met, and I knew you were a martial artist and you're from a certain school, we would already have this dialogue, and we would understand each other because of where we came from, right? So it's part of the culture of studying martial arts is like I said, the life skills and the respect and the discipline, and then there's a self-defense aspect of it.
Yeah, most definitely. It's funny you touched on Benny Urquidez there, Scott, because he actually the karate club I grew up in, Ishinru in East London. America actually fought England in Wembley back in the 70s. You may remember this in points karate, and they actually come to my dojo and trained in my dojo. I think the Thursday before they competed on the Saturday. So when I was growing up, there was all pictures on our dojo wall, and that was one of them, like the American and the England team together, in our club, which was quite a big thing then. Yeah.
I would love to see the footage on that. I would love to see the footage of that of the competition.
Round 2.
We just touched on an amazing athlete, or you've dropped some amazing gems in that segment of the show with regards to athletes and fighters, if you like. What is Scott Coker's all-time favorite fighter?
Boy, that's this is a tough one, because some of them are really good personal friends.
Of course.
But I tell you, it has. I think to me, my all-time favorite fighter. Can I give you the fight, or is that a separate question?
No, we can go into the fight as well.
Yeah, so, I tell you, my favorite fight of all time is in Strikeforce in 2011, and it was Nick Diaz fighting Paul Daly. in San Diego. I'm not sure if you remember that fight, but that was a barn burner, man. And I thought Paul knocked Nick out. I thought he was out because when he hit him, I think he hit him with a left hook, and Nick goes down, and he jumped on him. I go, this is over, and it was like the biggest upset. And then Nick comes back, and then they just had this war. To me, it was the Tommy Hearns, Marvin Hagler fight for MMA.
Well, that's amazing that you said that, Scott, because last week when we asked Michael Bisping the same question, he asked me who my favorite athlete was. And mine is Tommy Hearns, because the excitement he brought, you never knew what way it was going to go. Whether you get knocked down, get up, come back, keep it long, go inside, and that entertainment value is what makes Tommy Hearns my favorite athlete of all time.
Yep. Well, this was that fight. This was the fight. It was I think in November of 11, maybe something like that. But anyway, I remember it was in San Diego at the San Diego Arena, and Nick Diaz was a big favorite. And Paul, he doesn't mind scrapping with anybody.
Oh, so any day, anytime.
They just went at it, man, for like a round and a half. But to me, it was the Tommy Hearns, Marvin Hagler fight, and they both just left it all out there on the table. And, it was just, to me, the most amazing war. That to me is my favorite fight of all time. And, my second favorite fight of all time really is another Nick Diaz fight when he fought Gomi in Pride in 2000 and what I think it was 2007 or 8 in Las Vegas.
Yeah. I think it was
same thing.
Yeah.
He was getting taken too, and Gomi was hitting with some big shots, and then Nick just kept crawling back, and eventually submitted him. But it was just one hell of a fight, man. And those two are my favorite fights of all time. And another one the loudest event I've ever been to, as loud as any football stadium, like a soccer stadium or football here, was the fight between Frank Shamrock and Kung Lee here in San Jose. Right, I am not kidding you. It was so loud because you had the Bay Area bragging rights. We actually sold the arena half to Kung's fans and half to Frank Shamrock fans, because we didn't want them to intermingle with each other, because there's going to be fights in the audience. Right. If we had sold it like that. So we sold it really like you had Kung Lee had his code, Frank Shamrock had his code, and we packed the arena, sold out. But that to me was the loudest. I mean, that was the most electric, energetic environment I've ever been into with a live MMA fight for me. And so those are my 1, 2, 3. So you got more than one.
I mean, we've got some bang for our buck there, right? But as far as athletes, can you pinpoint the athlete for you? Your favorite
I'll tell you,
of all time?
I mean, I'll tell you, it has to be a fighter that came from a traditional martial arts background, because that's where I'm from, right? And kind of made the transition. And this is the fighter I feel the most respect for, as far as the transition. And I'll tell you, it's Kung Lee, because not only is he a friend, but let me tell you his little journey here. So he comes from Vietnam, and he was part of the fall of Saigon, helicoptered out, getting shot at, the whole thing, lands here in San Jose after a period of time, starts going to high school, starts wrestling, he's physical, starts going to traditional Taekwondo classes. And he had an instructor here that I didn't even know who he was, but it was very, inside the Vietnamese community, he had a Taekwondo instructor. And then he starts fighting in Kyokushin fights, right? He fought a kid named Arnie Solbudov from Kyokushin, which was one of Master Ishii's from K1's students. And he starts fighting in these bare knuckle, tournaments. Then he fights in Sancho, then he fights in Draka. Then he starts, transforming to kickboxing. And then, later in his career, he started doing MMA. So you're talking about a guy that could point fight. He could do kickboxing. He could do Sancho. He could do traditional karate with Kyokushin style. Mm-hmm. I mean, he could do anything. And you know what? If MMA was, let's say in California, it came late because it came here in 2006. And that's when I got into it. And he was a fighter, that we had promoted. So if MMA had gotten here earlier, he would have gotten into it earlier. And I wonder how successful he could have been if he would have jumped into it earlier, because he had all the skills, to do everything. And he had a good wrestling background, enough to get back up on his feet. And then and striking wise, and kicking wise, man, he was so much fun to watch. It was really it was masterful, some of the things that he did.
And I think what you've said there as well, Scott, as a traditional martial artist, his technique is off the scale, because sometimes we watch an MMA fight and you just want to see who's got the win, right? But from a technical perspective, his technique, whether it is kicking, punching, his line work is second to none. So
he was the transition that he made, because I wonder how many, if you said, okay, as far as being a versatile martial artist, you take an MMA fighter today, okay, now you're gonna go fight in Kyokushin karate. I don't know how they would do. It's a much different rule set, and you're bare knuckle now, and you can't tag, you can't grapple. So you have to. He was good in every single thing that he did, and I saw his transformation from day one when he was fighting in these karate tournaments, and I was like, wow, who is this kid? I didn't even know. I saw him on TV at a show called Draka, and they said Kung Lee from San Jose. I didn't even know who this kid was. I was just watching him on TV. And I said, I got to get a hold of this guy. I tracked him down. I got on my phone, man. I was making these calls. And I'm like, who is this kid? Good looking, Asian kid, had a big following here. And he was built just like this, crazy athlete. And, to see him go and become an MMA fighter and then, fight at the highest level, I thought he did great. And, honestly, if he had grown up doing MMA, he would have been unstoppable.
Scary. I mean, what a career he had anyway, though, Scott. So Kung Lee goes down in the record books for the Fight Mad podcast in the Fight Mad zone with Scott Coker.
Round 3.
And this is where we go a little bit deep. In your lifetime, what has been Scott Coker's biggest ever fight to overcome?
Boy, that's a great question. And I don't think it was an overcoming of just one thing. I think it was a transition of years and years and years to eventually, to do what we did with, let's say, the MMA, the kickboxing and the MMA business, right? It was just not accepted in the mainstream sport. I mean, I remember, for instance, mixed martial arts, 2006, California legalizes it. They gave me the first promoter's license. And believe me, everybody and their uncle wanted to be the first one to promote in California. But I already had a license for 22 years in 2006. So I said, hey, you guys have to give it to me. You can't give it to somebody else. You have to give me, we're already licensed here. So they gave me the first license. We do the first show. But I remember even the CBS affiliates and all these, is this human cockfighting? Is somebody going to die in here? It was really just this very negative tone around the event. And I remember saying, guys, to the media, listen, this is something that is already happening in the Olympics. You have boxing in the Olympics, you have taekwondo in the Olympics, you have judo in the Olympics, you have wrestling in the Olympics. This is really, I would say 90% of the sports that you're seeing today combined is already Olympic sports. So it's just a matter of understanding and educating people. And back then, Joe, there was no CBS television, there was no Fox TV, there was no Spike TV accepting it. Spike TV had started The Ultimate Fighter in 2005. I take that back. So they had started a show called The Ultimate Fighter. But as far as main terrestrial television in the United States, it just did not happen. And so it was a period of years and years and years of trying to just keep pushing and keep pushing. And, it's not just myself, but the whole industry to tell the people look, this is modern day martial arts. This is what martial arts is today. This is not just MMA fighting. This is, when I think about the past with Bill Wallace and Chuck Norris and Hoist Gracie, and these guys are the ones that created martial arts, evolved to this point. But MMA is what combative martial arts is today. And so that point, when I jumped in 2006 to today, it's been an ongoing educational process for the media that took many years. Now it's it's different now. Now CBS is involved, Viacom's involved, Fox is involved. Every network has had their share of MMA. ESPN, has the UFC. So, but it wasn't that it was so easy to get to this point. It took many years. That's been a big hurdle of educating the public, because people be like, oh my God, it's like, it's so much blood and cage fighting, and I'm just, and to me in my mind, and as a martial artist, like, these techniques are just martial arts techniques. The only difference is the ground and pound, right? And so you take that out, and really it's boxing, wrestling, judo, taekwondo, and karate. And those are already Olympic sports. So that was my education back to the general public and back to the media at that time. But there was a good 10 years where that was a constant pounding of education.
Sure. Within that time frame, Scott, was there one particular moment when you felt not you hit rock bottom, but it was like you was bouncing off the bottom to come back up? Was there one particular event or report, media interview where you was like, geez, what are we doing here?
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, it's like, when I look back at, like the all the great kickboxing fights we've done on ESPN and through the ISK, there's a lot of history here. And going into MMA, there's been some very big peaks and very low points where you're just like, hey, is it really worth it? And really, it's like the martial arts education really kicks in at that point. It's like, one thing is to have perseverance and to never give up and to keep going, right? And you keep fighting the fight. And to me, this is a much different journey, Joe, because for me, it's like, when I think about this martial arts journey, I told Kevin K when I came on board for Bellator in 2015 or 14, whatever it was. I said, I was coming up my 3-year non-compete after I sold Strikeforce to UFC. And I said, I'm really excited because now the martial arts journey can continue for me, right? And what I meant by that was, I feel like this journey since I was a young kid has really just stayed on this course about staying involved in martial arts and staying involved as a professional martial artist. I had a school, I taught, but I always want to be involved in martial arts. I could have sold, been doing other, other professions, or I could have, especially in Silicon Valley here, where there's so many opportunities, like in the 80s and 90s, like, this is a very booming economy still. And I could have went and did something else, but I always said, you know what, I'm going to either I'm going to be in the martial arts school teaching, or I'm going to be a fight promoter, or I'm going to find something that, I own a piece of the Fairtex gear company here in the United States for a while, but I always stayed involved in martial arts. And to me, it's like, this has been this lifelong journey. And to me, that's really what it's about, because I feel like the fights that we're doing now, it's like, it's just another way of the journey giving back to the people, or to educate the people that, like, this is what MMA is, and this is why it's acceptable, and this is why you guys should go out and study traditional karate, and why you should study mixed martial arts, because this is something that will be useful for you, not just kicking and punching, but the life skills that go underneath it. So it's been a lifelong journey, and I feel like I have a lot more to give, and I think we're doing a great job here at Bellator, and I'm going to continue this journey as long as I can, because this journey started walking in to Master Reyes School in 1974, and it just hasn't stopped. So a lot of big ups, a lot of big downs. It's been quite a ride.
Round 4.
We know music plays a huge part in training in the entertainment industry, and we've noted down. We've got noted down, Scott, in our production notes here, what Andreas put together. That you're probably a big 50 Cent fan, because you've been seen with 50 Cent quite a bit. But we want to know, what is Scott Coker's biggest musical inspiration and why?
Yeah, I'll tell you. Boy, I read the question, and I tell you the answer is quite complicated, because I think about the music that we would listen to when we were training back in the early days, right? Like when I was 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, that was like, quite frankly, that was the disco era back then, to be honest.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And
I'm picturing you, Scott, training to like, to disco, like Saturday Night Fever or something in the dojo.
Well, I mean, believe me, we used to do demonstrations with the Bee Gees music in the background.
No,
right? I mean,
amazing.
I swear to God. And Michael Jackson was really big back then, so we would do a lot of his music. And Earth, Wind, and Fire was really big back then. And then, as I got older, it's like, Queen is one of my favorite bands of all time. Queen, and I've always enjoyed the Rolling Stones, enjoyed let's say Led Zeppelin. Like, it's quite an eclectic, arrangement of music that I really enjoy. But back then, 70s, that was really, like the disco era, the Michael Jackson era, the Earth, Wind, and Fire era. That was kind of like the music that we would go out and listen to while we were training or performing. And then as I got older, I mean, really, it's like I love Vince Gill from country music. I love, I just love a wide variety of music. But if you had to pick one band today that I really love that I listen to all the time, is Queen. I still listen to Queen all the time.
Wow. And what's your favorite track from Queen, Scott?
I mean, it's got to be Bohemian Rhapsody, right? I mean, that's got to be that's like the go-to song, and I listen to. I mean, honestly, when I'm on the plane, I listen to it. When it's my go-to song.
Wow, that's a shocker for me. You've shocked me with Queen.
Well, listen, it goes all the way from disco and Earth, Wind, and Fire to Queen to the Rolling Stones, and the Rolling Stones came way later. I mean, I didn't see them until probably, let's say 10 years ago was the first time I went to a Rolling Stones concert, and I go, I get it. Now I get it. Then I went and bought all their, downloaded all their music and, paid Apple Music, all my money. And I started buying because, when I was younger, I didn't, I wasn't really into it. And then, but later I go, oh, these guys are super talented. This guy is amazing, and he's running all the stages. At that time he was probably 60 years old, running all the stages like a crazy man, but powerful. You have a lot of soul to it, a lot of spirit to it. So I got into that, and I still listen. If Stevie Wonder came into town, I saw him like 3 years ago. I would see him again. I love Stevie Wonder. It's like just a wide variety of music. It's really it's something that my mom, when we were living in, my mom actually was, before I was born, before my brothers were born, when she was living in Korea, she was a singer.
Okay.
And and she would sing on the USO shows in Seoul, and that's how my father met her. She was an entertainer, and I don't even tell that story to a lot of people, but so singing was something that she would always be singing around the house. So I always loved music, and so to me that's there's a certain part of your soul that comes out when you're singing, and I just love music.
I can fill a Bellator after party in London with Scott Coker on karaoke. Scott, I'm visualizing it already.
I didn't say I could sing.
Well,
but
money
I can sure bring my disco albums. Don't worry.
Tremendous. Great answers. And we touched on 50 Cent there, Scott. Big fight fan, huge fight fan.
Yes.
How did your relationship start with 50?
We have a mutual friend actually that works with us, and he said, "Hey, 50 wants to come to the fight." This was, a couple years ago, and I said, "Of course. Why would we not want 50 Cent to come to the show?" So he came, and he's a big star everywhere, worldwide. And when he came, people were just tripping out on him, and I really started talking to him, and said, "This guy is super smart, man. He's a good business guy, and he has so many great ideas that he wanted to do, and he had some products. He was promoting a champagne product that he was, behind. And so I said, why don't we start promoting your champagne brand for you?" And so we created this relationship where we promoted it on Spike TV and then on Paramount TV at the time. And that's how the relationship started. And he would show up to the fights, and he's a big MVP fan. You have no idea. Huge.
Oh, I do.
He loves MVP. He loves him some MVP.
Yeah.
I
was at the London show with you, yeah. And he come along and see Michael at that show.
Loves him. And I'll tell you a funny story. Funny story that I didn't mean to interrupt you, but a funny story that Douglas Lima told. He said, when I beat when I beat MVP, he goes, I felt like 50 Cent was mad at me. Like he didn't want to talk to me. He just kind of dogged me like, hello, yeah, nice to see you. I said, well, he loves MVP, bro. What am I going to say? That's just what it is.
Most definitely. He is a big fan. And I can see the respect there, because it's like that, athletes, it's always been the same, right? Athletes love musicians and musicians love athletes, whether that's basketball, soccer, football, or the fight game. There's always been that synergy there. And I think it's the respect, and there's most definitely a respect, when I see him in London with Michael, you could see the respect there for the art and for MVP.
And I'll tell you what it was too, Joe, is that he loved the fact that MVP was a performer.
Yeah, of course.
Like one of the greatest things about watching MVP, his talent in the ring is, I'm a martial artist, so I had loved that style of fighting, but it was his ramp walk that he's like, this guy's an entertainer, he should be in music videos and he should be this and that. So he loved the fact that he was such a great entertainer, not just in the cage, but also in his walkout.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, funny enough, you say that, Scott. Michael fought for us at the 10K karate clash back in 2002, 2004.
Wow.
When he was competing in points karate, and he was a young guy then, maybe he may have even been too young to actually really compete. He was 17, 18. And but you knew he was going to be a star then. And he actually competed in a different rule set to what, because in the UK you have freestyle karate and WKF Olympic karate. So he fought in a different rule set, but his presence at that time was you could see it. You could see this, a star was being born. I mean, I've known Michael since he was maybe 8-9 years of age, competing on the freestyle circuit with a big promoter in the UK called Neville Ray, who was very good friends with Michael's father. And they're all from the same era of like Kevin Brewerton, Neville Ray, Alfie Lewis, all of these great athletes from the UK, which he was brought up around watching, as a young kid. So superstar from day one. And I've got to also thank Michael. Whilst we're here, you're going to like this story. He come to the 10K karate clash. I think it was maybe 2018 or 2019. And he still had the promo T-shirt from 2002, right? And he wore it. He wore it under his shirt, and then he kind of showed me the T-shirt from way back in the day.
Cool.
So it was a really cool touch, really nice touch. So
I'll tell you, I really appreciate Michael, and he's been a great ambassador for the sport, and he shows mixed martial arts that there's another way to do this. You don't have to just be the wrestler or the jiu-jitsu guy. Like, you could be a striker at this level, and you could be very effective. And it comes from the martial arts background, and that's what I love. I love fighters. Listen, Strikeforce was created, and it was called Strikeforce because I didn't want to call it WrestleForce. Okay, so it was about strikers and people that wanted to strike. And MMA was, it was MMA, but we called it Strikeforce for a reason. Let's put it that way.
Round 5.
So Scott Coker, last round. We're in the final round, and I know you're going to come out swinging for this round 5, and it's going to be a tough one for you, Scott, because you've worked with so many people over the years, and I'm going to ask you to home into 3 people to create your dream corner team in life. It's a tough one. That's a tough one.
That's a tough one, Joe. I have to go back to my roots, and when I think of mother and father, to me that's one unit, right? So they're the ones that create a value system for you. They're the ones that got me into martial arts, create a moral fiber that you can basically live a good life from. And then my martial arts instructor is one definitely that has been such an influence and such a mentor. And I just can't say enough about him, because when I think about self-defense, martial arts, loving martial arts, and why I'm so passionate about it, and why I feel like it's such a a great thing for everybody to participate in. And, you know, the lifelong journey of staying in the martial art business really was from the love of martial arts. And just like yourself, like I love people that love and get and really understand martial arts. So to me, I always say my martial arts instructor was definitely one of the biggest influences of my life. And then the third one is, you know, my current wife, Darlene. I mean, you know, here's somebody that keeps it real, keeps it grounded, keeps it all down to earth, doesn't let anything get too big out of proportion. And I could tell you some stories, but I think it'd be too funny. But you know, she just keeps it very real. And you know, we've been together for many years now, and she's a very strong individual, and which I you know, appreciate and respect. You know, to me, that's the trio. You can put that trio in a corner, you'll be okay.
Amazing. I mean, that just goes to show you, you know, your family, you know, your family orientated, Scott. You know, you've been. I must say, you've been fairly private over the years with media. You know, you've been able to keep that line, and you know, some people are way out there with their family, and something I respect from you massively. Can we spoke about Mum earlier on. Can we just touch base on Dad very briefly? You know, what sort of gentleman he was?
Yeah, my father. You know, the Coker name is actually I think from Wales, and some people in some of the documents I've read, it actually is from Scotland. So it's from one of those two territories. They migrated over into America, you know, probably like a lot of Europeans did back in the, you know, 1600s, 1700s, and they became a farming community in the South and Tennessee region, and South Carolina, Alabama, Kentucky. And my father was born and raised in Knoxville, Tennessee. And when the Korean War was going on, he got recruited and he went over there, but the war had just ended. By the time he got to the war, it just ended. And you know, he's a Southern gentleman, super nice guy, just a really a warm-spirited soul. And you know, people say, "That's your dad," because they look at me and they look at my dad and they're like, "Is that your dad?" Like they couldn't believe that's my father. But you know, my father's American, or you know, of English descent. My mom is Korean, and I was born in Seoul. But when he went to Korea, he stayed there not just for the 2 years he was in the military, but he actually stayed there for 16 years past his military duty, because he opened an import-export business. And he met my mom. He married my mom. There, I had myself and two brothers, and we were all born and raised there. Went to a school called the Seoul Foreign School, which is still there today. It actually is doing quite well, I heard. And we grew up in a little district in Seoul called Itaewon, which is a very big shopping district now. But it was nothing like that in the mid and late 60s. It was just, to me, a very quiet little community. And you know, that's how I grew up. And so I got to see the East, I got to see the West, got to understand the culture of being, you know, let's say, you know, how the Asians thought or the Koreans thought. And then also, you know, coming back to America, and my father wanted us to come back here before we started junior high school, let's say. And so I got to see the culture of the US. And I really feel like this culture and the martial arts culture really helped me become a much better fight promoter. Because when I'm talking to Mr. Ishii in Japan, when I was working for K1, I already got it. I understand the hierarchy and the different, you know, like he runs it like a martial arts school, right? Like his organization. So I understood the hierarchy of you know, how it worked over there, and I understood the respect thing in Asia, which is much bigger than people give it credit for. And you know, but I also understood U.S. business and how that functioned. So to me, it was a marriage of both worlds, and I just think it worked great, and it's really been beneficial for myself and my growth in the martial arts fight business.
That's amazing. I think you know, I live in a mixed family as well. So you know, I think when you bring two cultures together, you know, it's lovely to see both sides of the fence. You know, and I think it only strengthens you for the big wide world, if you like.
Yeah, and you know, like I said, traveling to Asia was, you know, felt very normal. You know, dealing with Asian business, especially, you know, I don't want to say Japanese business is very difficult, but there's some things that are very difficult about the Japanese fight business.
Sure.
And we were able to overcome some of those things and make some really nice events happen, like we did 2 years ago in Japan. We had a fight with Bellator in the Saitama Super Arena, and we worked out a deal with Sakakibara, which it's never easy, but we got it done. Working for K1, which was some of the magical years of my promotional career. I love working for Mr. Ishii. He's been a great mentor. So to me, that was all part of the journey. This is just something I just felt such a natural fit. Like, the Asian martial arts business or culture, I understand that. The Asian, business world, I understand that. The United States business world, I understand. The US culture, I understand. How things are just different. So when things would break down, when people try to do business with Asia, and they're explaining to me why, I get it right away. I'm like, okay, I get it. I can see why things break down. But we were able to patch the gaps and produce probably in Las Vegas, we probably produced 10 great events maybe 14 great events for Mr. Ishii between 2000 and 2007. Those are the Bellagio, the Mirage Hotel, and I don't think those events would have happened if I didn't come from, like I said, a mixed household and understanding both cultures of US and Asia. I don't think those events would have happened.
Amazing. Funny enough, Scott, we actually, back in them days, I remember what was the heavyweight you had at that time with the black guy with the blonde hair? Was it McDonald?
Michael McDonald. And we tried to do a K1 fight. I don't know if you remember a British fighter at the time, Gary Turner. And we tried to do a fight with him, and we was lucky enough. We actually done the first K1 European tournament in the UK at the Senny show, which leads me on. Amazing.
Which leads me on to actually what you said about martial arts and the business world. There's so much synergy there with the both, and I had the pleasure of sitting down with Jun Rhee in round about 2007, and he literally, as you're saying, your respect for Mr. Ishii, he sat me down and spoke to me about business and martial arts and how they correlate and move together. And he done me a handwritten about three A4 pages. I'll show it to you one day.
Wow.
3 A4
pages. I would love to see it.
Yeah, and
I would love to see it.
I've got it. The hairs on the back of my arm are going up.
I'm getting goosebumps right now.
Yeah,
goosebumps.
Yeah. So, but the correlation with the both is, is amazing. It's lovely to hear, about your father. We know about Mr. Diaz Senior. Is a renowned name. Just touch base on. Let's touch base on how you met your lovely wife, Scott, and why she means so much to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something I think was meant to be. I was in Hawaii, and she's from Hawaii, and I was there, and I had met a friend of hers, and she said, you should call my friend up and take her out. I think you guys would be a good fit. And I said, oh, where does she live? She lives in Las Vegas. I said, oh, I'm going there next week for a fight. So I called her up, and our first date was a kickboxing match. So then I knew, like, this is gonna work because she's
down.
First
she's
date,
down.
Yeah, she's a trooper. But that's and her grandmother, who lives in Lanai, just turned 100 years old, right? Wow. And she was an escrimador from the Philippines right before. So she has martial arts culture in her background. She understands, the commitment and the time and the culture of this business. And she's been a great support system. And she does her own thing. She has her own businesses and hobbies. But when it comes time to let these fights unveil and work themselves out, it's very, she's very supportive, which is great because it's not always the case, as you know. So to me, that it's been a very, very good support mechanism, and we've been together many years now, and we have a son that's in his 30s, and he's doing a great job working for Bellator, actually running our social and in our digital department. So Jordan's doing quite well. But honestly, I see a lot of my friends, and you've seen it too, right? Get married early, have kids, get divorced, and then you go through their second wife. And I'm like, man, I'm just so glad that my family unit is intact and is still the same, and everything is good. So it's a blessing.
Amazing story, and it is. You're so right to have that box ticked where it's not a problem with what you do with work is such a big thing, because they're as you say, there's some relationships out there where it's not always the case. So very, very blessed in that aspect, as am I. So
yes, we're lucky. We are lucky people, Joe, because
very lucky.
Happy wife, happy life, right?
That's it. Listen, Scott, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. Big shout out to the Coca family. Big shout out to the Bellator family. Just fill us in before we go, what you've got coming up in July.
Yeah, July we have a fight at the Mohegan Sun starting off on the 16th of July. And that's going to be our current champion, Juliana Velasquez, who beat Alima McFarland for the championship about 4 or 5 months ago. She's going to be fighting Dennis Kiehholz from the Netherlands. So that's going to be a great fight at the Mohegan Sun. It'll be our last fight that has a limited capacity at the Mohegan Sun. And then we're going to go to Los Angeles at the Forum, where we've done some iconic fights, in the last 5 years. That's going to be July 31st. AJ McKee and Pitbull. Pitbull's going to fight, defend his belt, and he's going to fight for the tournament belt. This is the finals of our featherweight tournament championship. So everybody gets paid. Plus, whoever wins the fight, there's $1 million bonus check waiting for the winner. So it's a lot on the line. And again, Pitbull fighting AJ McKee, and we're going to have some great undercard fights that we're starting to announce right now. And that's going to happen on July 31st. And if you're in the LA area, come on down. And if you're not, tune into Showtime or BBC iPlayer in the UK.
Most definitely. And the deal you've done in the UK with BBC iPlayer, amazing deal. And make sure you hit the subscribe button on BBC iPlayer to catch all the Bellator shows live every time it's out, Scott, right?
Yes, it's live, but there are replays the next day in case people go to bed early. They can I will assure the fans in the UK and the different parts of Europe that we have traditionally gone to over the last 4 or 5 years. We will be back. Hopefully by the end of the year, the travel ban will be lifted, and Bellator will be back in the UK and Ireland and Europe and and all the places that we would like to go to and promote fights.
100%, and I look forward to catching you up when you're back in the UK, and no doubt I'll be at the next Bellator show, as I always am. Scott, it's lovely to have you on. People, thank you for tuning in to the FightMad Podcast. Please hit that subscribe button and follow us at Fighters Inc. We look forward to seeing you next time around in the FightMad zone with an amazing athlete, an amazing insider, or a celebrity fight fan. This is the FightMad Podcast, hosted by me, Joe Long from Fighters Inc.